Hello, you're listening to Premier Christian Radio, and at the moment it's the Woman to Woman show. I'm Maria Rodriguez, and the programme here with you until midday. Well, right now, I'm going to share with you a conversation I had with Fi Cameron, a woman who has had the awful experience of having to go to her own daughter's funeral. But back when her and her husband first got married, they didn't even think they would be able to have children. They went through a roller coaster with infertility, and she picks up the story now.
Looking back now, it was an amazing time. At the time, it didn't feel amazing, it felt awful. And, every month when there was a disappointment, then I would plunge into despair and then pick up the pieces and, there's always another month. Looking back now, I really think I got to talk to God a lot at that time. I got to cry, sometimes to rage at him, but a relationship really began to build. It's through the tough things, I think, our relationship with God takes on another dimension.
And over time, eventually, your miracle baby Shirley was born, your little girl. It must have been an absolutely joyous moment. And yet it was also tainted with a little apprehension because she only had 2, not 3 blood vessels in her umbilical cord, so thigh at the time. Did that concern you, or did you think, hopefully it will all be okay?
I had the effrontery to assume that God had given us a perfect baby. We'd waited so long and we deserved a perfect baby. So the 2 blood vessels, hey, what's that? It didn't really matter. I'm a little bit wiser now, I hope, and I realise I had never much assumed that.
And so as time went on, you share about how your memories of Shirley as a young girl, that she would cry a lot, perhaps more than other children. So how did you deal with that as a mother? That must have been quite a hard thing for you.
I had no experience, but she was my only child. And the only thing I felt so much compassion for her, that I could just love her and pull her onto my knee and let her cry. I said to myself, I'm never going to push this child away. I've longed for her for so long. I've loved her so much. There's no ways I'm ever going to say, this is too much. I won't be there for you.
So a real sacrificial mother's love. Growing up in the midst of trying to help Shirley deal with her emotions and the way that she found things difficult, were you aware of what her relationship with God was like as a child?
Not really, other than that at the age of 4, we were in a caravan park, a beautiful place called Blader River Canyon. I don't think you've been there?
I haven't, not yet.
Okay. And she was 4 years old, and I said one night, would you like to really give your heart to Jesus? And she said so. She said yes. And I knew because I had done a lot of work about children and education and studied this stuff, that with a young child like this, you wait to see if it's real. And then there was later on another time when she was about 13 or so, and she went on a school camp. And she came back and told me that really she'd met Jesus again. So there were a couple of things like that in the growing up process. But when she went to university, I think she'd come to think that God was really her problem, because he demanded so much of her. He was never satisfied with her. He was never could be pleased. And so actually it was time she stuffed religion and walked away from it. And in her university years, she actually did that.
So as a mother and as a woman in ministry, you must have found that pretty hard. So was it just simply a case of you responding with love and getting on your knees in prayer and hoping she came back?
Yes, I always felt the thing to do was to pour out love on her. But I prayed very hard, and one of my prayers was even to pray, Lord, whatever it takes, bring her back to you. I never dreamt, of course, that it could involve cancer or anything like that.
And of course you allude there to how this story progresses, but before you get to the stage of cancer, Shirley does go through a number of challenges, broken relationships, depression. What did that do to you as a mother to see your only child suffering so much?
Her pain was always my pain. I could not really distinguish the two. So a child in pain, I think many mums will agree, you're in pain too. And so the struggles and so on, I think were very deeply internalized by me. And I so felt for her. and so longed for her to be happy. I remember on one occasion saying to her, "But how about being happy?" And she said, "Mom, it's just 5 years on, and I'm just 5 years unhappier." And that was heartbreaking, absolutely heartbreaking. You know, Maria, one of the things that made it more difficult was the fact that I was 6,000 miles away. She had moved to the UK in the year 2000, and I was 6,000 miles away. So I couldn't drop everything and run and come and sit and have coffee with her.
Of course, yes.
Yeah, and that added to my anguish. What if she needs me? How quickly can I get there?
And at what point on this journey of trying to support Shirley did you begin to realise that actually perhaps she was battling with her mental health?
I think I had known all along the line that something was not right. But in my own studies, I've come across the roles of making your own choices and the importance of that. And so, if you like, I tried to encourage her from the knowledge I had from my studies at university to make her own choices, to be able to stand on her own feet, that if she did that, she'd be empowered and she'd feel better about life. So I spent endless hours writing emails, sitting on the phone, encouraging. And I think where I erred was I'd moved into fix-it mode. I wonder if there's anybody listening to us who knows about fix-it mode. We move very quickly and easily into fix-it mode. And I regret that now. Perhaps it was not appropriate. But what I understood was she was struggling so much on her own. She needed the help of someone to do life. And I tried to do that. Whether I was right or wrong, I don't know. But I really did try through all that time. Once again, whenever the phone rang, I would sit for hours listening to her go round and round and round. But I never allowed myself to say, "That's enough now, I've got to go."
Bless you. That's an incredible sacrificial response to her situation, because by the sounds of it, it took up hours of your time, literally, but also hours of your time afterwards, emotionally thinking through things, praying through things as well. So that's an incredible witness in the way that you responded to that. But as time went on, Thai began to realise that actually her daughter was living with battles with her mental health, and we'll continue to find out about the journey she's been on, as written in her book, Mom, Please Help Me Die. You're listening to The Woman's Woman Show. I'm Maria Rodriguez on this Tuesday, the 13th of August.
Sing a new song to him. How is the new Digicel plan I sent you?
I've been talking non-stop and I found out I can call unlimited to one international number.
The plan comes with data as well, so you don't have to worry about getting online, watching videos.
That is great news.
Send a Digicel Stay Connected plan back home and your loved one gets unlimited international calls, unlimited local calls, unlimited WhatsApp, data, and more. Go to a store near you, visit DigicelTopUp.com or download the free Digicel Top Up app today. Terms and conditions apply. Plans might vary by territory.
Premier enables the hope of the gospel to reach our nation every day. Premier's strong voice of hope is needed now more than ever. It's the time for the Christian voice to be heard, the time for Christians to respond to our calling, the time to shine light across the UK. Right now is the time to support Premier in the Save a Life, Give Hope summer campaign. Please help Premier continue broadcasting throughout the summer. Your gift of any amount is needed now. Call 08000 74 77 77.
Have you ever bought an investment sold by Barclays, Halifax, Lloyds, Santander, or any other bank or financial advisor? Investments like stocks and shares ISAs, investment bonds, and certain types of pension can be risky. If you lost money with one of these investments, you could be owed thousands of pounds in compensation. Even if you no longer have the investment or the paperwork, here at Goodwin Barrett, we can still help. To start your free assessment with Goodwin Barrett, text QUICK to 66777. That's QUICK to 66777.
Listen to Grace to You with John MacArthur on Premier Christian Radio every weekday at 7 p.m. to hear biblical truths from God's Word. That's Grace to You with John MacArthur right here on Premier Christian Radio at 7 p.m. every weekday.
I've changed a lot. I now have a deeper understanding of who I am.
Discover, develop, or reignite your relationship with Jesus this year at Cape and Ray Bible School.
Cape and Ray has made the Bible so much more relevant to life.
Cape and Ray, where God changes lives and lifelong friendships are formed. Search Cape and Ray Bible School.
Premier Youth and Children's Work magazine is out now.
Is God real? How can we hear his voice? Can I be healed? These are some of the big questions children and young people ask when they're taken away from their normal environment for a few days. Summer camps have the power to change their lives forever. So we've devoted a whole issue of the magazine to sharing these stories of healing, encounter and commitment. Plus we celebrate the impact and legacy of Youth Festival Soul Survivor, speaking to key people such as Matt Redman, Mike Pilavachi, Ali Martin and Tim Hughes.
For your free copy, visit youthandchildrens.work/free sample.
Woman to Woman, sponsored by Harvesters Ministries.
Good morning, this is Premier Christian Radio. Thank you for joining the Woman to Woman show with me, Maria Rodriguez, here until midday. At the moment, we're hearing from Fi Cameron. She's written a book about the journey she's been on with her daughter. We heard just before the break there that her and her husband struggled to conceive children when they first got married. It was a rollercoaster journey. But we've also heard about the emotional rollercoaster that she's been on with her daughter. How her daughter, as she was growing up, was more emotional than other children. And after a while, Fi began to realise that actually her daughter was wrestling with mental health issues. But they were living in different countries. That Fi was in South Africa, whilst her daughter Shirley was living in the UK. We're going to continue the story now. When Fi began to get concerned about her daughter's well-being, she really wanted to make sure there were some other people around her who could support her and phone her mother if things got really bad. You talk about how as time went on, and obviously you were beginning to be aware more and more of her struggles with her mental health, that she began to get sort of quite furious with God, getting frustrated with him, and you even began to have concerns that she may be suicidal. So you mentioned there that you were so many miles away in different countries. So how did you handle this concern that maybe she might do something to take her own life?
Well, I said to myself, wow, Fi, if she does, you don't even know anybody you could phone and say, please go, Shirley needs you. So I approached people in the church, Nick in particular, who features very much in the book, and also Chris, who was a mentor and friend, and said, please guys, you need to give me phone numbers or some sort of contact, because I believe this is really, really serious. That was the one thing I did. And then the other thing I really seriously contemplated getting on an aeroplane and landing on her front door. But I held back from that because that to me would have been disempowering her all over again. It would have been me taking control, and I was trying so desperately to help her take control of her life herself.
You share with us in the book how Shirley was super fit, she was physically healthy, doing all kinds of incredible sporting pursuits. So when you heard that she'd got a tumour on the bone and she shared they thought it was cancer, do you remember what your reaction was to that?
Total disbelief, total shock, total disbelief. How can this be true? We were in a game reserve, the Kruger National Park here, and we could only get a message from her via a text on her mobile. And we just stared at each other for nearly an hour without being able to respond. So it was utter shock and disbelief. We cut our holiday short, we drove home, and when we got home, we were so thankful she phoned us. And she said, and she was so calm, and she said, "Mom, I've decided I'm going to do this. I'm going back to God." And that was the best news ever we could have heard. But I woke one morning or two later, was absolutely in grief, crying out, "No, no, no." So that's possibly gives you a little bit of an idea of how I reacted. I'm sure we all react to these terrible things in our own way.
So it did progress then, Vi, and it wasn't just a case of waiting to see if the cancer diagnosis was correct. It then got even more severe, a diagnosis with problems with her lungs, 10% survival rate, which meant perhaps a year. That's serious and dramatic for a mother to hear. Did you feel, though, that you had to be the strong one in this and not let Shirley know that you were upset?
I think actually it is true that there are times when you put your own emotions on hold because you know you've got to be there and you've got to, well, I suppose, take control of the situation. We don't like those words, but actually somebody had to be on their own 2 feet and functioning. And so I think I really did put my emotions very much on hold, just trying to be there for her, trying to give her as much time as possible to do the things she did and loved doing and to feel that I'm running my life. I knew even then that sadly she would lose more and more function, that unless God really intervened and was going to save her, it was nothing but a downhill road. So it was hard, sad, but I just knew that was what was happening.
Yes. Now, initially, Shirley did struggle, understandably, with the whole diagnosis and where God was in it. But as time went on, she began, through the process, to know God's love for her in a new way. And that must have been a beautiful encouragement for you and for the family. So what happened, do you think, then, for there to be that shift in her understanding of God through this challenging time?
Maria, we are very blessed in that I have her diary. I've been able to look and see a lot of what she had to say and how she progressed through that. And I just see somebody really, really courageously interacting with God, walking with God, bringing the problems, the trials, the struggles to Him, crying and weeping in His presence, then strong again. She said at that point in time, I know that the only way to do this is to trust God. If He is trustworthy, I can believe all the things He's promised me in the Bible. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to believe He's always with me. I'm going to believe I do not need to fear. And believe you me, that's quite a lot of doing, because over and over again, fear became a huge issue for her. But she went back every time to saying, but God says I do not need to fear. And then there were events, specific events, where I believed God was asking her the question, are you prepared even to die for me? She sat down and I looked at her face and she said, Mom, I must consider that I may not be healed. And she just broke down. And a couple of those meltdowns happened one after the other. But the most important one was on the 18th of January in 2014, when we'd been to the hospital and the news was really shocking. We came home, she drove us home through the rain, crying all the way, and she got into bed. And I felt in my heart, God was asking her, will you accept? Maybe you haven't yet, but will you accept that I may be asking you to die. And all weekend long, she just lay in bed. I could get her to drink a little bit. And I sat downstairs in anguish, my heart breaking for her and praying for her that she would find peace. And then on the Sunday afternoon, I climbed into bed behind her, my arms around her, and she said, "Mom, it's okay now. I know that if God wants me to die, I'm okay with that." So it was a journey, Maria. It was not a thing that came quickly. And so was the journey from I've never been happy to in the last weeks of her life, she kept saying, "I'm so happy. I'm so happy." She would go to church and be in worship and be blessed and come back saying, "I'm really so happy."
Well, we are hearing this morning the power of God to turn around a situation completely, and Shirley going from desperation and darkness to a place of being happy and at peace and content with God. But as a parent, it is heartbreaking, difficult to know that your child is going to die. How has Thai managed to deal with that? We'll explore that very shortly here on Premier Christian Radio. Thai Cameron has written a book about the journey. You can search for it online, and her name's Thai, spelled Thy, so Thai Cameron. And I'll give you more details coming up very shortly here on Premier Christian Radio.
multiplying at Harvesters Ministries, opening the way to the gospel for thousands of new people every day, right across the world.
1616, not 256.
But your help is urgently needed. For every new church we plant, a new pastor is trained, and a new Bible is required.
100 to 10,000.
Your gift of £15 will provide a new pastor in the field with their own Bible, equipping them to preach the word and open the way for others to know Jesus. And we'll keep multiplying until not one single person will be left without hearing the good news.
Naught to naught.
Be the one to give the gift of God's word to a needy pastor at harvestersministries.co.uk. Harvesters Ministries, opening the way so that the world can know Jesus. Have you ever bought an investment sold by Barclays, Halifax, Lloyds, Santander, or any other bank or financial advisor? Investments like stocks and shares ISAs, investment bonds, and certain types of pension can be risky. If you lost money with one of these investments, you could be owed thousands of pounds in compensation. Even if you no longer have the investment or the paperwork, here at Goodwin Barrett, we can still help. To start your free assessment with Goodwin Barrett, text QUICK to 66777. That's QUICK to 66777.
Premier Youth and Children's Work magazine is out now.
Is God real? How can we hear his voice? Can I be healed? These are some of the big questions children and young people ask when they're taken away from their normal environment for a few days. Summer camps have the power to change their lives forever. So we've devoted a whole issue of the magazine to sharing these stories of healing, encounter and commitment. Plus we celebrate the impact and legacy of Youth Festival Soul Survivor, speaking to key people such as Matt Redman, Mike Pilavachi, Ali Martin and Tim Hughes.
For your free copy, visit youthandchildrens.work/free sample.
PayPal introduces Zoom, the money transfer app that lets you send money fast for cash pickup or bank deposit. Download the Zoom app today. Restrictions and fees apply.
Knife crime is on the rise in England and Wales.
Knife crime has hit a record high as violence soars.
2 teenagers have been killed in London.
You've heard the headlines. The figures are truly shocking. Our young people's lives are being cut short at an alarming rate. Enough is enough. As children of God, it's important more than ever to unite together and pray for our young people, to turn away from a life of crime, and that lives will be transformed. Please join us and thousands of others in a nationwide initiative to cover the map of the UK in prayer. Sign up at peaceonourstreets.org.uk.
Hello, you're listening to Premier Christian Radio. I'm Maria Rodriguez, and today Fi Cameron is telling us about the story and the journey she's been on when her daughter, who was physically fit, healthy, was diagnosed with life-threatening illnesses. And suddenly to have to come to terms with the fact that your daughter dying is a really big thing. And Fi's going to continue the story with us now.
Woman to Woman, sponsored by Harvesters Ministries, opening the way for the world to find Jesus.
Obviously, as a parent, to try and prepare yourself, not just prepare her, for the possibility of death. And you talk about how one of the medical professions, called Shirley and said, I think you need to call your parents from South Africa to come immediately because the cancer is so advanced. And you say, how do you pack something to wear for your own child's funeral? So did you and your husband have time crying together and sharing emotions? Or was it just a case of just going into, trying to be strong mode and deal with the practicalities?
We were so shocked, so traumatized. This was this child, as you've said, who was so healthy and strong, an athlete and all that. She's got cancer. She's got a 10% chance of living. So I think some of our reactions were a little bit robot-like. Now, as I look back, I'm wondering, because I no longer have to be strong, I'm wondering if I'm not releasing more of my emotions, feeling more than I felt at the time. But at that time, it was just a stoic, well, I've got to do this, pack up and go. And when I got there, that was the 4th of July, 2014, she said to me, Mom, I'm really very sick. And I just put my arms around her. That wrenched at my heart. And then she said, I'm going to go and wash my hair now, and it's all going to fall out. Please, will you shave my head? And I don't know why, Maria, but that to me was horrific. I've just arrived here. She's just briefed me because she pulled out a thing called the Red Book, which tells you what to do in case there's a crisis, in case she collapses, who you have to phone and what you have to do. She'd done that, and now she says, shave my head.
So, throughout all of this journey, why did you want to write the story for other people to be able to read?
But I think I had a feeling I would always write a book. But you know, what really triggered this was in the last week in her life when she asks the young Tux from Oxford to come and make a video of her testimony. She says over and over again, I just want to glorify God. I want to tell my story so that maybe it will help somebody. I just want to glorify God. So I have that ringing in my ears. And then one night I'm having a dream. And what I dream is there is a relay race and there's a baton exchange. And as the person comes up to the baton exchange, I realize it's Shirley and she's passing the baton on to me. And I understood that to mean, please tell my story. We have the material on videos. Originally, the idea was that it might be used by one of the big churches on one of their courses. That didn't happen or hasn't happened thus far. So in the end, my editor kept saying to me, the main thing is the book. You need to tell the story in the book. The videos are extremely powerful, and they're available on my website, so maybe somebody wants to go and have a look, they can. But the main thing was the book, because she said you can flesh out so much more in a book.
Do you find it difficult, though, to share the story, though?
It's getting more difficult, Maria. It's getting more and more difficult. You know, we came back from a month in the UK, and it took me 2 months to get back on my feet. But what I am finding is the more helpless you are, the more ready you are to surrender and to say, God, nothing's going to happen here unless you will step in and take over. Yeah, I found that time and again. Actually, the time that I was in the UK, I spoke 9 different times. And each time, because right before I left, I had a recurrence of chronic fatigue syndrome. I had to say to God, I can't do this. I am too weary, fatigued, unable to concentrate. Over to you, Lord. And I think that's a pretty good way to give a message, having surrendered it to Him. I think that's a pretty good way.
You mentioned there your website where people could perhaps view the video of Shirley sharing something of her journey. Would you be able to give that to us so that we can go and have a look if we want to?
Right, well, it's actually based on the name of the book. The book is called Mum, Please Help Me Die. And so it's www.mumpleasehelpmedie.co.za. Just about 6 weeks before Shirley died, she called me over and she said, you're not going to like this. And I had a sinking feeling, and she said, Mum, I am dying. And I choked out, yes, I know you are dying. And she said, Mum, please help me die. And I promised her that I would do everything I could. In the past, I'd done whatever I could for her, but this was much bigger and much more commitment. I will do everything I can to help you. And I believe God called us to, she could stay at home. I was able to look after her at home. And there were a couple of us around her at the moments, the last 2 days of her life, singing to her, praying with her, talking to her, holding her hands. And that was the way in which God, in His gentleness, enabled more than me, but others to help her die. But if you ask me now, how did I do that? I have no idea. This was my only child after all. How do you do something like this? I have no idea. It must have been God.
Well, our thanks to Thy Cameron, author of a book called Mum, Please Help Me Die. And of course, not that her daughter wanted to take her life, but to be able to die well, close to God. You can find that book by heading online or to a Christian bookshop. Thy Cameron, and Thy spelled T-H-Y, Thy Cameron, Mum, Please Help Me Die. And what a story it's been. Maybe it has brought to the surface your own emotions of grief and challenging situations you've been through. Well, this next song is dedicated to you. It is Praise the Name of Jesus.
think so by the sound of it.
Gee, this is now recorded for 40 minutes. So I'm so impressed with this recording facility on the phone.
Yeah. And you could pause it.
Yeah, anytime.
So, you know.
Now I am wondering how to get it off the phone onto the website. There must be a way.
Must be a way.
Surely plugging that cord in, then clicking on the file, copying it, but then where do you paste it to?
Okay. Can we,
into videos maybe.
No, it's not a video.
Nevertheless, it's that kind of a file. What else? Can't put it in pictures, can't put it in Word.
iTunes, wouldn't you?
Maybe. Maybe just ask James on Saturday.
Yeah.
Because you see, I've got both interviews now on cloud. And why don't I put it on the website, even though people have missed it?
Yeah. Can I stop you? Or do you think it's going to go on?
I don't think so, no. But just let's leave it.
Okay.
Let it fade out. Excuse me. Strange music.
He's right.
Darkness with stars. The God who orchestrates the future. At the same time, He knows where you are. Give me that God who supplies my needs, 'cause He owns all the cattle on the hill. And He's the God who wipes my tears and provides enough to pay all my bills. And give me that God, that's the God I'm talking about. Give me that God, that's the God I'm talking about. Give me that. extra piece that'll add, extra piece of the ease of pain. I want that love that'll never change. Oh, give me that, give me that, give me that, give me that.
Kirk Franklin singing Give Me here on Premier Christian Radio, and earlier on in the programme we were thinking about Marty Sampson, who has sadly said that he is no longer adhering to the Christian faith, and he wrote a song, Oh Praise the Name, and as we use it to worship God, why don't we lift Marty up in prayer and just remember him and his family and pray that God would strengthen him at this time.
Okay, I think it's finished.
Yeah.